Whenever I talk about regional folk martial arts, it's usually different kinds of wrestling styles. This is because striking arts end up looking surprisingly similar to each other at the highest level. A punch is a punch and a kick is a kick. There's of course nuances in, for example, the specific way a round kick is thrown in different styles, but often the more interesting part is the rule set and how the style reflects the culture it comes from. So with that in mind, I have for you today 3 different bare-knuckle fighting styles with wildly different rules from our modern boxing. Let's start with the one with the least amount of information available. Irish Stand Down.
Cool name.
It is. So, full disclosure, I found the book that Wikipedia also quotes as a source. It's an 800-page encyclopedia on martial arts from 2001 called Martial Arts of the World by Thomas A. Green. I couldn't for the life of me find out where in the book it says any of this, and I'm not about to read all 800 pages for one video, so I'll just trust Wikipedia here. Anyway, Irish Stand Down is a style of traditional bare-knuckle full contact striking where moving is minimized or prohibited entirely. Unlike standard bare-knuckle boxing where distance management and footwork play about as much of a role as it does in modern boxing, in Irish Stand Down you never exit the close engagement range.
That's metal.
According to idiomorigins.com, 18th century pugilists would engage in contests where the opponents would stand literally toe-to-toe and trade blows until one or the other stepped back or fell down and so lost the contest. Apparently this is where the term stand toe-to-toe with someone comes from, as Irish Stand Down was also known as toe-to-toe.
The more you know.
It's pretty interesting. I guess the point is to see which fighter is just overall quote-unquote the toughest. As a man, I kinda get the appeal of unflinchingly taking hits without falling.
Okay.
But also as someone whose personal fighting style is a lot more reliant on head movement, parrying and distance management, because my nose is incredibly prone to bleeding and I don't like it when my face hurts because I'm a little crybaby, this wouldn't be something I'd like to try. But I'd imagine many brawler type boxers, or in Muay Thai terms, nak muay kao, would enjoy this. The type of fighters who walk down their opponents and aim to stay at close range due to either their superior firepower or solid build and defense. This type of fighting demands immense conditioning, as taking hard strikes, even with solid defense, drains you of your energy very quickly, especially with the crack that bare knuckles give you even when defending.
Ooh, nasty business.
I feel like the people of Ireland, from an outsider's perspective at least, are very similar to us Finns. Both our countries have been tossed around and stepped on by bigger players on the global field, our traditions and all religions snuffed out by the church, and the Americans were weirdly racist towards us at some point. Still, both our countries have this enduring fighting spirit about us, taking hits time after time but never staying down and being proud, but trying to stay humble about it. I just feel like us Finns are a lot less jovial about our alcoholism and brawling than the Irish are. Maybe it's the polar nights.
Seasonal depression, man. It gets you.
It really does. That's unfortunately all I got for that one. A cool little tidbit, but not a whole lot to talk about. Still, it's an interesting slice of the history of Western boxing. Hopefully, by sharing this, I'll get someone in the comments going, actually, and sharing some concrete knowledge on this one.
That was so stereotypical. Oh my god.
Alright. Next one is a form of stand-up fighting from the early Middle Ages of Russia called Stenka Na Stenku. Stenka Na Stenku, wall on wall or wall against wall, is a form of fighting where two teams of around 5 all the way to hundreds in some cases duke it out to settle differences like legal disputes or personal issues. It was also done to celebrate holidays like Yuletide, Maslenitsa or just Sundays.
You know, just your casual Sunday
It's just
brawl.
everyday Sunday brawl.
Whole family can join in.
Fighters were boys or men from ages 16 to 60. Stenka Na Stenku could be held between small friend groups, different parts of the same town like streets or districts, or even entire towns. In both the one-on-one traditions as well as these bigger group battles, there were rules that were commonly known by everyone, like that you were only allowed to strike with your fist, no striking a downed opponent or an opponent that had admitted defeat or was bleeding severely. Everyone knew these rules from childhood, as fist fighting was, at the time, a natural continuation of the play that kids do. Sometimes after fighting, both sides would have a feast or a drink together to show there's no bad blood between the fighters. After all, it wasn't all about disputes and settling matters, as fistfighting in pre-revolutionary Russia served as a display of cultural values like strength, bravery and dignity, as well as a form of entertainment. Unfortunately, this form of bare-knuckle boxing has been tried to ban numerous times since at least the 13th century. First, it was banned by the Christian Church as a pagan tradition. Later, in the 17th century, it was again reinstated by Peter the Great, who was himself an avid fist fighter and saw fist fighting as a way to show Russian battle prowess and the earlier mentioned cultural values. Tsar Nicholas I again outlawed it, but the tradition still lived among the Russians. It was later outlawed again by the Bolsheviks in 1917.
Governments never want us to have any fun.
You know, just having your casual little 600 people fun.
You know, your Sunday brawl.
Your Sunday brawl, man.
The church banned it because it was on Sunday. People didn't go to Sunday church.
Oh, that might be it.
Now I completely made that up. I don't have any.
That's my headcanon now.
That's my headcanon.
These days, you can still see fist fighting in Russia as a way to settle disputes, but the general attitude around civilian fist fighting as a traditional form of entertainment and part of celebrations has changed since the Middle Ages. These days, if they have an issue with something, the Russians just invade smaller countries for 4-year-long special operations as a little treat.
Shade.
Luckily, some people do keep Stenka-style tradition alive though, as we can see with this 600 versus 600 brawl back in 22.
That's very Russian of them.
To me, the idea that fist fighting to teens and adults is what play is to kids is pretty understandable. From a young age, kids tend to get into scuffles to settle disputes and just have fun roughhousing. If it's done in a way where everyone knows the rules, respects each other and don't try to unnecessarily hurt one another, and as long as it's not the default answer to every problem you face, I don't think it's the worst thing imaginable. Unfortunately, for the first two styles, I didn't find any specific techniques. Seems like they're pretty much just accelerate solid contact point A, in this case a knuckle, into sensitive tissue B, in this case the face. And the unique part was the rule specificity.
That's a pretty hard word to say.
And I got it on one try.
No, you didn't.
Shut up. And the unique part was the rule specificity. The rule specificity. Specificity. The rule specificity. Specificity. In exchange, our last style will cover all the unique techniques you could hope for. The last form of bare-knuckle combat I want to talk about today is rough and tumble. Rough and tumble, also called gouging, is a form of hand-to-hand combat from the 18th century rural North America.
Sounds nasty. Couching? Ooh.
Back in the yeehaw cowboy times of 1700s, people with disputes would agree to fight fair and square or by the Broughton Rules, or they could go for rough and tumble or no holds barred and dirty. The Broughton Rules were the boxing rule set devised by Jack Broughton in 1743 after a tragic incident where he unintentionally ended the life of his opponent George Stevenson in a boxing match. Broughton Rules prohibited you from striking a downed opponent, gave a downed opponent half a minute to get up, and introduced mufflers, the predecessors to modern boxing gloves, to make training safer. This rule set worked later as the base for London prize ring rules of 1838 that were then superseded by the better-known Queensberry rules of 1865. So apparently, 13th century Russians had less brutal rules for their bare-knuckle boxing than the English in the 1700s, since I didn't find any recorded deaths for Stenka. Contrastingly, rough and tumble would have none of these restrictions. Biting, clawing, punching, kicking, and as the other name gouging implies, going for the eyes were all perfectly valid forms of attacking. I know. Gouging the eyes was the pinnacle of rough and tumble because it pretty much meant the fight was over. The best rough and tumblers would of course be adept at other fighting skills as well, like boxing or wrestling, since fighting skills of all kind are transferable to other styles. If someone knows, for example, collar and elbow wrestling on top of how to gouge eyes, and the other one only knows how to scratch at your face, the wrestler will most likely win. The more options you have, the better, of course.
Yeah, the wrestler is just going to wrestle you to the ground and then gouge your eyes out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kicking a downed opponent, headbutting and kneeing the groin were also viable tactics that were not seen in any civilized form of combat. Some people allegedly would even file their teeth and nails into sharp points in order to better bite and disfigure their opponents.
That's crazy.
It's bonkers. You see, I told you there'd be unique techniques.
Oh my god.
In what other style do you file your nails and teeth for better attacks? Unless you're a Bucky character, that is.
Bucky is...
gay.
That too, but also not a sensible piece of media at all.
This form of fighting took on near mythical proportions, as place names like Fighting Creek and Gouge Eye in Kentucky were signs of battle royales so brutal that eyeballs and severed ears scattered across the field, allegedly of course. In 1746, after the deaths of 4 people in these bouts, North Carolina tried to combat this form of one-on-one violence by making it a felony to cut tongues, pull out eyes, slit, bite and cut off noses.
Damn.
Couple years later, in 1748, Virginia tried to do the same, and by 1786, South Carolina had implemented a law against what these days sounds pretty funny: premeditated mayhem, making it a capital offense and defining it as severing another's bodily parts.
Why did they give such a silly name to such a serious problem? I don't know.
It's a premeditated mayhem. Over the years, the popularity of this form of single combat fizzled out as people, especially the southern planter class, wanted to seem more distinguished and felt the need to distance themselves from the lower sort, as it were. And in the 19th century, as less and less of North America was the kind of rural setting where rough and tumble thrived, and with the spread of bowie knives and revolvers, this kind of interpersonal conflict, if not died down, at least changed forms to something a bit different. Yeah, I don't have much positive to say about this one. It's brutal and unnecessarily violent form of dispute settling, taking all the risks of disfigurement, disease and dying just for what? To seem braver, more daring or manly than the opponent? No thanks. I prefer keeping my eyes right where they are, thank you very much.
Yeah, like what's the point of being like, okay, at this time here we are going to beat the shit out of each other when you can just beat the shit out of each other in the situation? I don't get it. Why was this like a form of combat? I don't
exactly.
I don't know.
Like, why would you say, hey, let's agree to go here and then pluck each other's eyes out?
The one who plucks the other's eyes out first wins.
Yay! You might wonder why the animosity against this style but not Stenka, which was also outlawed. Well, Stenka was a form of folk tradition and generally done without malice, but rough and tumble is just brutality for the sake of it. Although I understand the need at the time for such a form of fighting, as living in the kind of rural and quote-unquote wild settings amidst poverty and violence made it necessary to do everything you can for survival, but if there was a choice to go fair and square, why would you ever choose to subject yourself to gouging? It's interesting in a way that all forms of hand-to-hand combat interest me to a certain extent. You could argue the line between the civility of breaking someone's nose or busting an eye with a punch and doing the same by gouging is slim, and the only difference is the intent, I guess. But there is something unnecessarily feral, unhinged and animalistic in intentionally disfiguring someone by biting, scratching or gouging. Same as it's different to, for example, kick someone in the forearm and as a result have the forearm fracture versus placing the forearm on an incline and stomping on it. I know. Same case if you knock someone out with a punch and they hit their head on the ground versus standing over someone prone, grabbing their head and slamming it on the ground. The outcome is the same. Knockout, fractured skull, possible death, most likely death, but one of them is clearly premeditated and intentional in its brutality.
And on the other case, you 100% break the arm, you 100% fracture somebody's skull. On the other, it's an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen.
It's an outcome of the technique you use, but it's not the point of the technique. To me, it's about whether violence is a tool or the end goal. Yeah, rough and tumble as a style is a product of times that I do not care for us to return to.
100%.
That was 3 different set of traditions, rules or styles of bare-knuckle fighting from around the world. I could have just filled the list with styles from Asia, since most of them are bare-knuckle, but I've talked about Asian styles plenty already, I think. And I do think there is some intangible cultural differences between the bare-knuckle fighting of Western countries and the traditional martial arts of the East Asia. Thank you to friend of the channel Diglett for helping me with filming in Red Dead Online. Oh, and of course, links to all the sources are down in the description as always. That's all for today. If you want more martial arts showcases or video game martial arts analysis, sub to the channel, follow us on the socials below, and check out our Twitch if you want to chat live. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.